We're here the afternoon of PAX Saturday. I'm here with Daniel, aka D-Skaz, who was the co-host yesterday of the panel, The History of Video Game Music, alongside Benny from the Axis of Awesome, who we also interviewed 2 years ago at PAX for the Jukebox feature.
The Mario Orchestra actually performs this one in closure around an actual chord tone, stepping either side of the beat.
Now we're back again, but first of all I would like to talk a bit about the panel. Tell us how the panel came about.
Cool. So Benny and I were playing for a video game talk show that we were doing in Sydney for the last couple of years called Bonus Stage. And we were just doing sort of background music for people walking on and off, and always game music, of course. And then we sort of fell into doing Twitch as well. We got sort of a bit of a following, made a band called Senya D, which looks like a band. It's really hard to explain why it's called that. And so we started going on Twitch and playing video game music covers. For like 3 hours. We'd just like sit there and work out what the chat was suggesting. We knew Guy, the guy who's like content director for PAX Global.
Shout outs to Yug.
Yeah, shout outs to Yug. Good work, man. Got in touch with us and was like, do you want to do some panel on music? And then we're going to do it last year, and then it sort of fell through, ran out of time. This year I was like, I can prep, I've got all year, let's do it. And here we are, got everyone together, and we had a great time doing it. I think everyone enjoyed the panel as well.
Didn't know what to expect going into it. It's a topic I really love, video game music. I thought you guys blended a lot of humor and didn't get too nitty gritty in the technical, because I think there'll be half of the audience that'll really appreciate that, but then there'll be a half of the audience that'll just be like, So you went quite a good ways to mixing it up, and you were talking about a lot of music theory and ideas behind it. What were some of the things you really wanted to nail down on in the talk?
So I guess, I mean, there's a lot to it, and it gets very technical. That's one of the most interesting things about it, and it was one of the most fun things to research. But there's just so much that you can put in a talk. At the end of the day, there's 900 people, whatever, are there to listen for an hour and have a good time. So nobody wants to hear me talk about circuit boards for an hour. I
do appreciate that level of things. You mentioned Digging the Carts. That was a really good documentary series by Red Bull, and I think that's one of the sort of underappreciated sides of it. And you went into that, limitations of technology.
I mean, definitely one of the biggest things about game music is the limitations of technology. I mean, that's what made it its own genre in the beginning. We wouldn't even talk about it like it was different to film music at all if it didn't start with this like super iconic and definitive sound. So we're kind of at this point now where like old game music is its own like thing, and you can hear something even out in like the bigger world. If someone's writing hip hop or they're doing any other kind of genre, they can include like something that sounds like chiptune, and then it's like now it's like a thing. Oh, you're using like chiptune, or you're doing game music or whatever. With the musical concepts that we tried to cover, we just tried to cover the bare minimum that like you need to understand the point that we're trying to make, because like that's another thing that can be a bit of a snooze fest if people don't care as much. But mostly melody. The important thing about that old music is just that they had to focus on melody because they couldn't do much else, very limited sounds, as we were talking about before. So basically, nailing the melody was super important to getting like the ideas of your game across back in the early days, yeah.
Was the Genesis the greatest sound of his generation?
I think it's up there, man. Like, there's a lot of Genesis fans, and I didn't get to talk about the Genesis very much at all. I focused a lot on the Nintendo Entertainment System and the SNES, but there's some good stuff on Genesis, dude.
Well, of course, we're here to talk about the Jukebox. This is the feature that we're doing here and why we asked you to come along. 3 of your songs that you've chosen for whatever reasons. What's the first one?
Okay, so the first one, I actually want to do Threatenin' Zeppelin from Cuphead. It just came out. Super interesting. The whole soundtrack is a big band. They got this like 1930s swing sound. It's like unlike any other thing. They also have like dynamic solos. So the solos on the songs are different when you play through, because they didn't want it to sound boring when you keep dying to the same boss. But it just fits the style of the game so perfectly, and it sounds amazing. So yeah, Outset Island from Wind Waker. It's just, man, it's such a great song. It just sounds like home. The instrumentation's really simple, but it just nails you with like the exact right vibe. And then they reuse the motifs from it later on to make you really sad, so it's great.
And finally, what is your third choice to wrap up the Jukebox?
So I want to go with, I talked about this in one of the talks yesterday, but I want to go with Green Garden from Bomberman 64. Just like amazing synth sounds. The synth bass is incredible, so pay attention to the bass line. And just from a time where game music was kind of just like someone being like, yeah, I have this excuse to write this really cool thing, and it doesn't really fit anywhere else, so we'll put it into this game. And it just sounds super cool. That game has a really unique soundtrack. I think it's pretty underrated.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your choices with us. Daniel, Discaz, if there's anywhere that people can follow you, if they have questions about video game music, theory, ideas, opinions, God forbid opinions, how can they reach you?
So easiest way to reach me is just on Twitter, so it's just at @D_Scaz. I don't know why I'm writing that backwards in the camera. Yeah, just hit me up on there. You can ask me whatever you want, and we can have a chat about game music. It's so great, and it's great to find other people who want to talk about it.
Thank you, Daniel. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for talking with us.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.